And that was to bring your breakfast up, which a lot of them did. In fact, on our way in, one man went little bonkers and tried to get over the side. We had to grab him and pull him back in again. Well, he didn't have time to think. You're frightened.
Well, first, give us a mug of rum. Let me go get him, guy. And then after we got on the landing craft, just before we got on the landing craft, our commanding officer said, well, you must remember, you guys are fighters, and you go out there and get them. But I don't think none of you guys will be coming home. We told them we were all coming home. We'll go in there and we'll kick butts.
And at the same time, the Air Force were flying over us, and I've never since seen so many planes at one time.
The continuous bombing meant around-the-clock arrivals and departures of bombers in England.
Once we landed, of course, we turned the taxied in, shut down, and then we went into debriefing. The intelligence people debriefed us with all the questions that they had to ask and to determine just how successful the trip had been and all this type of thing. And then we went to bed.
If I recall correctly, we took out some gun placements, and there were several houses and other buildings that were our particular target. And so we were bombarding from 7 to about 7:45, because each hour, which is when the troops were to hit the beach, we had to be stopped bombarding before that.
The invasion was to receive complete aerial support from Fighter Command.
I probably took off about 7:30 to be sure to be there by 8. I was on the first show. We would get out over there at 8 o'clock, and we patrolled Juno Beach, Juno and Sword.
Well, as we got off and onto our light landing craft, we circled and circled, and finally we started to come in, and I think the Germans were more surprised, and they couldn't believe what was going on.
From what they told us, it was one of the roughest days they'd had on the English Channel in something like 60 to 65 years.
The ramp on the craft was so high, I guess it'd be about 8 foot high. We couldn't look over that, and so we just had to wait and wonder what was going to happen.
The Germans were firing at you, and the shells were coming at you, and I stood up in the middle row, and they were asking me what I saw. And I said, oh, the shoreline is only about 1/8 of an inch high. So as we kept coming in, and all the time, getting bigger, it's bigger and bigger. And finally I heard this whang coming over the top of my head, crack, 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 crack. And then I got down. I couldn't get down any further because of this guy's back in front of me. And my pouches were sitting on top of his.
That's when they're coming over your head, it's a snapping sound, you know. You know that keep your head down or it's going to snap into you. The one that you don't hear is the one that gets you. While they were opening up, the big LCTs were loaded with these rockets, and they had we were told about 3,000 rockets on each one of these LCTs. I remember seeing this tank that was sinking. It had this helium apparatus around to keep it floating. That's a Sherman tank. But they were climbing out of it because it was leaking and they were trying to get everybody out. And we got closer. The front end of our landing craft was hit by an HE shell that came through where the sailor was in the compartment to lower the ramp of the LCT. And he came out, he was all bloodied, and people said get down because we could hear all this crack, 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 which is the small arms fire going over your head.
The Royal Winnipeg Rifles were the first to land on Mike Sector, under fire from the largest concentration of pillboxes along the beaches.
After we got on there, and then when we hit the beach, and then that's where really the trouble started.
We knew there were these pillboxes, there's 5 of them, and we even picked out the spot we're going to set up our mortars on the beach.
And then they were way up on the hill as you went in. They were on the hill started, and they fired down from there.
We had a good idea of what we're up against, but they kept saying, well, it's second-rate troops, it's people who had ulcers and something wrong with flat feet. But you put anybody regardless of what condition, and behind a trigger, they can pull it.
Landing craft was something, the tide was ahead of us. And when the landing craft came, it circled and dropped his, then you had to get off.
And then the hollering of the commander of the boat, everybody get off the boat, start getting off.
When they open to get on, well, that means go, don't stand. Or else if you stood right there, the machine guns are going to be at you.
When that carrier went in, it was built to go 4 feet. It just sank right in, and it pulled the trailer off with it. The next one in was ours, the same bloody thing. We just went in the water and we just sank right down.
When I jumped out, that was in the water up to here, and you have to hold your rifle up so you wouldn't get it. But my rifle was no good anyway when I hit the beach. That was the biggest problem. How can you fight no rifle and all these machine guns and these pellet boxes, these cement? So we had to use our grenades.
I must have gotten right in the path of the LCAs come in, because one of them sort of brushed my shoulder and I sort of went underwater, and I said, screw it. So then I struck out, but when I finally got touching my feet, the landing crafts that had passed, the fellows that got out, there's people who were in the water. Some were face down. So you running towards the beach, just grab a couple. Bob Hussey, he grabbed a couple, pulled them in. He was doing the same as I.
If you stayed still, you were a target.
A lot of things happened. A lot of people died in that time.
Well, we figured once we got to the land, it was much better than in the water, eh? Because you know yourself when you come on the beach, what have you got to cover?
All the time we're thinking, well, at least I was thinking, I've got nothing. What are we going to do? Where's our mortars? We got nothing to support anybody.
If we could get in them, hey, we get one guy jump up on you. There's 2 guys jump, and then one on top getting on, then one trying to throw the grenade and make sure it falls inside. That's how we have to get the guns out.
By sniper fire and Gunson, they kept picking away at him and wounded him a second time. And that must have been pretty rough on him, because his brother was in the same boat. He was killed right on the beach, right with him.
So it didn't matter how many we lost. We still had to go.
This was the hour that all of the first wave landings would occur, and when the most men would die. The resistance was severe, and the casualties were in the same ratio as those on Omaha Beach.
We were in about 1,500 yards ashore. We could see a fair amount, and you could see them hitting the beach and the ramps going down and plowing their way up on the beach.
You could see some of the tanks coming. They had tanks that will float, and they were coming ashore.
And then when we got over there to patrol, we were patrolling the beach. Looked down, we could see the guys coming out of these landing craft. The big door go down, and they come out of the water about up to here, and they had their rifles up, keep them dry.
We came back up to the beach, and we went up and down the British, Canadian, and British beaches at 500 feet, just as the first landing craft were coming in. So we watched them come in, and we could see out to the horizon. There was black smoke on the horizon from the battleships out there firing.
But it was just unimaginable, the organization that they put together for that, because everything had to be right on time.
It was just as the first landing craft were coming in. We saw some get out and charge up the beach. There were enormous explosions, of course.
We could see people heading for a certain point. We could see it so well defended that they were going to run into a machine gun nest or something like that. We couldn't do a damn thing about it.
Each hour is when the assault infantry were coming in, our guys from our rifle companies. And then you had another group, and you had tanks and self-propelled artillery. They were just coming onto the beach. As we got in, I ran towards this one chap, and I laid down on Corporal Scaife. But it turned out he was dead. But since I had no weapon, I just grabbed this Sten gun and I grabbed this small pack. So I made my way to the pillbox on the right. And we got there and we turned around, and we see the guys were still stuck out in the water. So instinctively we just grabbed, like I say, we just grabbed people that were still floating in the water and pulled them as far as we could. Bob and I, we got Corporal Martin, he was moaning in there. We got him up to the pillbox and got him out of under cover. Corporal Martin, who was there, he said, "But hold me, I'm cold." So I was holding him for a while, but he was badly raked with machine gun fire right across his midriff. And of course that meant that his lungs were going, and you had the bubbles from his mouth, from the blood. And he passed away in a matter of about a minute. So, and I found out later he had a young kid that he never saw, a young boy in England that I didn't think he had ever seen. The whole area, we roughly 130 casualties we had along the beach. You waited so long to die so fast, You think about it, you lose a lot of all your people who trained for all that time. A lot of them are gone in just that short time. And then you look around, where's all your buddies, all the people you know? And the brigade headquarters come in, and there's a sergeant major there. They needed a runner, so I was designated as a runner for about a half a day. And Bull Kloss, we had a chap that he got mortally wounded, but he went in and they found him in the pillbox with his hands around